I'm really here as a proxy for a great bit of work that was undertaken by Professor Peter Fleming, who indeed, to show you the impact, is currently in Australia discussing with Australian policy reformers about really what are now 2 to 3 decades of work. It also emphasizes that not all contributions to society at the research base involve large labs, technology, money. He was invested in with small grants, which I'll come to, but indeed it was the power of observation and the methodological study that came out with such profound changes to our society. He noticed essentially that 2,000 babies each year were dying of what was called cot death, or is now called sudden infant death syndrome, and that was just in the UK alone. He would then notice that when then getting a network of paediatricians around, this number was continuously, when audited, was rising in both the UK and globally, and was yet without any explanation. He then undertook some work through the foundation, which is a charitable support for the cot deaths, the Sudden Infant Death Syndrome Foundation. And what he noticed really was that on just simply observing what happened and taking demographic evidence and observations, there were basically 3 very simple things that increased your risk of cot death. And that was babies sleeping face down, babies covered in too many blankets, all the loving ways we want to give our children, but of course, still in those days, and still is, the sad exposure to tobacco smoke. And with those 3 simple observations, he then continued his research certainly in the Avon area, where there was a network established already through ALSPAC, which is a longitudinal study of children. So he already had the inroads and the network in order to enable this work. And really what the data showed quite conclusively was very nicely that if you look simply at babies that were slept on their back, there was a marked reduction in cot deaths. Now, it doesn't look very good because it still looks like it's the commonest cause of cot death, for which it is, because cot death happens to be still, sadly, reasonably common, but yet if you sleep on your back, you have less chance of dying than if you slept in any other position, as you can see. If you tried to sleep on any other side or front, you increased your risk. So you markedly reduced your risk by just simply putting the baby on their back. If you then looked at the other risk factor, which was tobacco smoke, he then noticed quite simply that the increased numbers of smokers in the house, or numbers that you smoke, increased linearly almost the risk of cot death to that child. So there was 2 very fundamental changes you could do to prevent cot death. But that required changes in behavior of society, which we know and we've heard about can be enormously difficult. So he continued with this, and there was serendipity out of the sadness, but of course, Anne Diamond, at the time a celebrity, lost her child to cot death, and that started a major campaign. We've heard today about how do we get society to listen to us about our science. This is a simple observation about moving forward. Sadly, but serendipitously, out of a death of a celebrity's child, we're able to get the Back to Sleep campaign launched, endorsed at that time by government, and during that period, within a month of looking at deaths, which you can get from the registers, of course, there was a reduction by just not smoking in front of the child, putting them on the back, not swaddling them so much, reduced 30 to 40% the incidence of the death. And within a further 2 years, that was reduced further by 70%. Quite dramatic changes on simple observations. So Peter continued his work. And it was still saying, well, okay, we're slowly improving the lot of the child or the baby. But then the other great observation was that over half of the cot deaths occurred when co-sleeping. The thought of looking after your baby in your own bed is actually not a great idea. But always have the child in the same room. So it was shown by far that the safest place to have your baby, again, just observational and methodological research, was to simply show that lying on your back, not covering in too much clothes, not smoking in front of the child, and having the child for the first 6 months in your bedroom but not sleeping with the child, and even when they nap, having them in the same room reduces the incidence of cot death. So with this, it's led to massive policy reform, and it's led to better approaches, not only for further investigation of how we can reduce this, but also in the society's understanding, the change of behaviour due to the Back to Sleep campaign, the contribution that it made and Peter made to the Children's Act in 2004 in changing policy, and then endorsed and engaged with the Department of Children's Schools and Families in publications, DVDs, education, throughout all midwives, all through antenatal care, about the care of your children, from simple observational and methodological research. So today, Peter's work, and out of a very simple, small funding base that's gone over decades, he basically saves 12 babies each week in the UK, quite enormous. 10,000 deaths have been prevented in the UK just simply due to this Back to Sleep campaign, and over 100,000, as you can simply read, worldwide. This is globally still being taken up by countries. It takes behavioural change, and of course that's societal based, and not all countries agree with the philosophy that Peter's putting forward. But now over 30 countries have adopted the Back to Sleep campaign, a great endorsement of Peter's work and simple changing of our worlds. Thank you.